Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for hanging with me on this Tuesday. And if you've taken some time out of your busy schedules to support my channel with comments and likes, I really do appreciate you for that. All right, so one of the most consistent patterns as we get into the fall months is running as far up a river as you can go. And there's a lot of different things that I really want to touch on when it comes to this style fishing, because this can be very confusing. You can get up there, not see anything that you think you should fish, and come back down the lake. So I'm going to run you through a few different scenarios that I've seen happen and why this is such a beneficial pattern in the fall months. So the first thing, take every bait in your tackle box and narrow it down to like one bait. You can flip and just do that only, and that can be the only thing you focus on. So get you a finesse jig or a full-size jig or some type of Texas rig, rather, creature bait, beaver style bait, and just focus on that. You don't need a spinner bait because you're going to be in pretty narrow little areas, so the wind isn't going to get too bad to where you can't flip. You should be able to just fish a slow moving bait on the bottom wherever you go. Now, cover is very important. Bank transitions are very important if you don't have cover, but something different when you get up there is where the fish are going to be. So if you have bushes and laydowns and trees, stick to that, stumps, whatever it may be. And if you don't have that, then where the rock changes, if you go from chunky, thick rock to flat banks, steep banks, whatever, but just look for little subtle nuances up there and go and fish those. Drag that jig around, drag that Texas rig around, but the bait category, what you pick, should not be that important. Fish are going to be hard to find. Fish are going to be in weird grouped up places, and they're going to be very scattered. So if you go through 12 different rods, that can be very confusing in this type of setting. So just run way up there, get up as far as you can go, and then break out your flipping bait. Now, here's a few things that I think a lot of people don't talk about when we are talking about way up a river. Now, everyone talks about the bait, and the first thing that comes to mind are little threadfin shad, because those are everywhere on your lake. Those can be incredibly confusing. You can be seeing bait, not catching fish. You can think, well, maybe they've all pushed into the back of the pocket. You run into the back of the pocket and there'd be a ton of bait back there, but no bass. And that happens more often than there being a bunch of bass. You can be seeing bait everywhere you're going and not catching anything. So bait, very important, but it's not always just a little threadfin. Sometimes it's a lot easier just to focus on bluegill or just focus on gizzard shad and not worry about any of the threadfin, because there's so many of those in most lakes that they're going to confuse you more than they're going to help you, rather. So for that reason, maybe it's just about looking for bluegill. And if you do get way up a river and you start flipping around, you do start seeing bluegill, that's enough bait. You don't have to worry about anything else. Now, another thing that I do see happen when you do get way up a river is you think everywhere you're fishing is very obvious. So there's a bluff wall, there's a turn in the river. Everyone that rides by there hits that and fishes that. And that is very common. That does happen. But one thing you do have to realize with that scenario is that banks get washed. Water changes. You may have a segment of the river a mile up that's muddy one day, the next day it's clear. So what is going to happen when you have constant changing water clarity and constant changing mud to clear to mud, fish are going to kind of monitor their own selves when it comes to being caught and being pressured. So you may have a bank, could be the best bank, but everyone that runs through there muddies it up. So after like 8 o'clock every morning, especially on the weekends when there's a ton of boating pressure on the lake or on the river, wherever you're at, that bank may not be any good. So it's very important to spend an entire day up there, see how it fishes in the morning, see how it fishes in the afternoon, and learn, well, that place gets really muddy. So after, lunch, this stretch isn't any good. But if you hit it first thing, it can be the very best stretch up there. So those little things are very important when it comes to catching 2 fish up there or catching 8 fish up there. The timing and when you hit things and how the little areas set up is very important to always pay attention to. So don't let bait confuse you. Don't let what seems obvious to you deter you from fishing it. And don't let nothing that sticks out to you deter you. You just got to get up there and you got to start throwing at some targets. You got to start looking at little things that are different, because the bass are going to get on those types of things. So very important this time of year to go check up the river. That is one of the most consistent bites in the fall. And I'll give you one last tip, because I've seen this happen later on in the year. Now, I like a Texas rig, I like a jig, and I like to fish around that type of stuff. But if you're getting bit and the fishing is kind of going hot to cold, where one day you may have 6 or 7 bites and the fishing seems really good, the next day you go and hit it and it's just falling off. What does tend to happen, and if you are seeing a lot of boats fishing in your area, the fishing pressure can change, and this is typically more October, November is when I've seen this happen. But this is when, if you are around fish and you do know you are around lots of fish, baits that the fish have never seen are very important. So that's when you break out strange looking baits that are going to do the same thing that you're doing. And, you know, if you're fishing a jig down the side of a bank, get something else that's just a little bit different. And seems like that will really tell you what is there. But I think that's very important. I can't think of like a bait with a blade on it that just kind of can go down the bank the same way you're fishing a jig. I can't think of what it's called off the top of my head. But those little changes in baits are very important. But I think it's important, most important, to just stick with one bait. Just roll with that wherever you go. Find the groups of fish, and then if they shut off or whatever, then you switch baits. But it's more important to just lock one thing in your hand and just go looking, and that should help you break down rivers. So try that, guys. Good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.